Okay, guys. So I hope everyone had a lovely break. During mine, I got to slather cortisone cream on one of my daughter's mosquito bites. Yay, I'm living my best life. So, okay. So we talked about already reducing motivation, right? We're just going to kind of like pull the rug out from under those kiddos, right? They don't need to engage in the challenging behavior because we are going to kind of catch them before they need to. Now, our second strategy is called extinction, okay? Where now this may have been reinforced before. You may have said, hey, teacher, I've got the answer. And I may have said, oh yeah, what is it? Now, guess what? You're not going to get the attention from me, right? Maybe previously you said, I don't want to do this. And I said, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You don't have to. I'm so tired. Like, just, you know what? It's okay. Well, now the escape is not going to be reinforced, right? We're going to actually follow through with the task. Now, so these work differently for attention or escape, right? For attention, well, you don't get anything from me. I go into poker face mode, right? So where I may have reacted before, I may have attended to you before, I may have delivered attention right before, you may have gotten access to whatever item you wanted before. Now you don't get that, okay? We have to instead, if you can ask for something and that will totally be reinforced, right? But you don't get it from me just for free or by engaging in that challenging behavior. For escape, whatever behavior it is that got you out of that initial task or demand, you don't get to get out of it anymore, okay? Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't absolutely, make curricular adjustments, right? I'm a big fan of do 5 problems, skip the next 5, or do the evens, not the odds, right? Or do 1 problem and then we will, do something fun. There's all kinds of adjustments. But in general, this is saying, you know what, those cruddy behaviors, the screaming, the flopping, the whatever it is, they're not going to get you out of this, okay? We're going to work through it, right? But when you are following directions, oh my gosh, the world is your oyster, buddy. You're going to get big party, big, amazing, high quality reinforcers, right? Because you did what I asked you to do. And on that note, you guys, I always say we cannot take compliance for granted, right? We have those kiddos that are so lovely and they follow directions every time. And often they get kind of pushed to the wayside because they're not the rebel rousers, right? And so they follow directions until one day they don't, right? And so we always, if you can, any kind of direction following, just like praise, a little pat on the shoulder, whatever it is, however it is you genuinely deliver reinforcement, do that for compliance, right? I have 3 daughters. It turns out I'm really good at helping teachers and helping other students, and my own daughters give me absolute fits. So if you're thinking, oh, behavior analysts must have the most well-behaved, behaved children. No, it's okay. We don't. But my 3rd daughter, 100% of the time when I ask her to do something, she will do it. Yes, mama, I'd love to, mama. Do you need any other things done, mama? Do you need help, mama? Oh my gosh, she's a dream. Until she feels wronged. And then it's like hellfire has ascended over our house because she holds a grudge for like 7 days. So I always try to remember, like, I have to reinforce that compliance, right? I have to, just give her a thick, rich schedule of reinforcement. Thank you so much for being mama's awesome helper. Thank you so much for being kind and lovely, right? Because she does do the things I ask her to do all the time. My middle one, she's at about a 25% compliance rate. So she gets a lot of like anger from me and frustration, which I think she really likes. It's reinforcing to her. So I need to put these things into practice in my own home. And there's that balance. The one who always complies, the one that doesn't. And where do I put my attention? Unfortunately, the one that doesn't. And I need to switch that, right? Same with this. Extinction is so powerful, but there are some disclaimers that come with extinction, okay? And these are those. We are not talking about dinosaurs, right? We're not extinguishing kids. They're not on extinction, right? We don't extinguish a person. We extinguish the behavior. And so I have walked into classrooms before and there's a kid just having a heyday in the corner, right? Keeping himself busy, picking the carpet, making faces at people. And I said, what's going on? And the teacher will say, oh, that kid's on extinction. Well, that's not really the way it's supposed to work, right? We extinguish the behavior. So that means we extinguish the screaming and crying by saying, you know what, we're just going to keep going with what the original demand was. And we understand it's hard, but we're not going to remove this task just because you're engaged in these cruddy behaviors. Or on the flip side, attention, right? I may have reinforced that in the past where you shouted out, you did funny things, right? And I gave you attention for that. Well, it's gotten kind of out of control. And now I'm going to not attend to that. And it's going to take a while, right? Sometimes you get a burst. Sometimes this kid is like, wait a minute, this worked before. I'm going to go full board. I'm going to do more shouting out and more funny jokes and more inappropriate behaviors. But if you hang tight, it will go away. It will decrease. My mom was a general ed teacher for 30-something years, and she had mad classroom management skills. But once in a while, she would call me for some guidance. And one day she called me and she said, oh, Kate, I've got a really sticky situation. And I said, oh, what's going on? This was a 5th grader. She said, well, every year I have the kids fill out these index cards to tell me a little bit about themselves. And this kid wrote on the back, I seek negative attention. And I was like, ooh, wow, all right, let's talk about this. Clearly this kid had been told this, right? You seek negative attention. So I said, okay, well, here's some strategies. Like a lot of them involved extinction, right? Like you can't attend to these things, mom, right from the get-go, or he's going to, do these all year long. So a couple months later, we were chatting and she called me again for something. She said, I think I really messed up. I said, uh-oh, what happened? And she said, well, I was doing a literary, section in class. We were reading a novel and I look out and this kid has his feet over his shoulders up in this tiny desk and in all his glory, like right there. And I said, oh gosh, mom, please tell me you didn't laugh. And she was like, I totally lost it. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, oh no. Well, you reinforced it. So guess what's going to happen the next time, right? He's going to show all his stupid human tricks, funny things he can do, right? And then I was like, oh, that's it. That's what we do. So I said, mom, he's smart enough. Like you can set up a contract with him and say, look, buddy, if you keep those, funny things to yourself, if you, are on task, get your work done, hey, at the end of the week, you can have 10 minutes, 15 minutes to tell jokes in front of the class, if they're, clean, to show all the kids the cool tricks you can do, right? It can be, the Cameron show, right? And that's not his real name, but and you can even teach him to delay and bank that time. So he could have 5 minutes at the end of the day, or he can bank it and have 15 on a Friday, right? Whatever. But use that behavior to your advantage and make it contingent and have him earn it, right? But she had reinforced it instead of extinguishing it. It ended up working out very well. He enjoyed having that time in front of the class. But that's something that, could have been extinguished instead. Like she could not have attended to it and boom, it would have gone away. Flipped it over, different situation, and it worked. So the thing about extinction, it doesn't teach a replacement behavior. So it's like, okay, that this kid has been shouting out or asking questions of me, every 2 minutes. Okay, I can ignore that and not give it the attention, but is it teaching this kiddo what he should be doing? No, it's not. So I have to teach that replacement behavior. And then maybe I put a script on his desk that says, raise your hand. Or, a script or a red rectangle that says, call on me, please, that he can touch. Something to get rid of this, right? Whatever it is. But I have to give him that replacement behavior because if any of you guys remember science from high school, there was something called the law of conservation of matter. We cannot create matter in the universe, right? Magically. We can take it from here and it appears over here. Well, it's the same with behavior. If we get rid of this challenging behavior and it was all about attention, this kid's going to find a way to get attention in another way, right? It's like whack-a-mole. You get rid of this one and it pops up over here. And we want it to pop up under our, distinction, under our direction, under our, whatever we have picked that is socially appropriate. So that's the thing about extinction. Also, we never use it with unsafe behaviors, right? Or dangerous behaviors. We can't say, oh yeah, that kid, he's just banging his head. I've got him on extinction, right? No, we don't do that. If that kid is putting themselves in harm or someone else in harm, we do not extinguish it, right? We have other strategies for that. So, okay. Now, here's our third strategy, right? We're going to teach them appropriate ways to get the reinforcement they were seeking, either by getting out of something or attention, right? So if they are desperately trying to get away from something or avoid it, right? We can teach them, okay, dude, that's fine. Ask for a break. Say, this is too hard for me right now. Say, I don't like this. And it doesn't have to be vocal, right? We can use a script they can point to. We can do a picture they can point to. We can use the little voice activated recorders, have them push a button. We can use a Big Mac, right, button. We can use whatever we need, or we can just, prompt them to say it in order to get out of that. Now, don't ever assume that kids can ask for a break, even if they are just general education students, right? If it's not in their repertoire and if it hasn't been strengthened and reinforced in the past, often they don't know how to ask for help. And I found this with some middle schoolers who were shutting down. They would come in. I had this one student, he'd put his hoodie over his head, put his head on the desk, and that was it. And the teacher was like, I'm such at a loss. Well, it turns out he was very embarrassed. He didn't know how to ask for help. And there was a social contingency there. He didn't want to ask for help in front of his peers. So we had developed some secret signals, right, with the teacher that he could do very subtly that would indicate, this is hard. I need some help. And that was way better than the hoodie over the head and, putting his head down on the desk and pretending to be asleep. Okay. Same for attention, right? We can teach kids to say, talk to me, play with me, anything, like come sit next to me. We can reinforce all of those amazing responses instead of the, hey, right? Or wanting to bug a peer to get their attention. We can teach them to say, can I play with you, right? Super simple. Can I hang out with you? I had a situation where I was working at, I consult at a preschool locally. And there was a little guy there who was nonverbal, but he had figured out he could go, and then go scratch his peers, right? And they were terrified of him. So the teacher and the parents had done a great job of trying to teach the peers to say, stop, and put their hand out. Well, that worked for about 2 seconds, and he would wait for 2 seconds, and then he would go, and come at them again, right? And they would disperse, totally freaked out. And they were getting hurt. He was good at scratching. So we had to get in there and try to teach him a way of saying, play with me, right? Interact with me. And this is interesting. So there was a student teacher in the room, and the teacher said, oh, I've got it for the replacement behaviors, right? My student teacher made this great board, and it had 4 different options. And one was like elbow bump, and one was high five, and one was, they were all kind of just physical interactions. One was hug. Well, I said, is he using it? And she goes, no, he hates it. And I said, well, that's fun. I wonder why. I want you guys just to surmise, put in the chat box, like why you think he hated it. Why do you think this little guy did not want to use this board? Okay. And I'm going to look at the chat. Oh, I can't. Yeah. Okay. Look at, yep. Not his interest. Excellent. Yep. Yeah, not yet. Hadn't had success yet. Good, you guys. Didn't like the touch. Yep. Didn't. Okay. Yep. Didn't want to be singled out. Good. Yeah. And he actually he didn't want it. Yep. Yep. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No. Okay. That's good, Michelle. Yes. Not the same reaction. Not to. Okay. Yep. Yeah. You guys. Awesome. They weren't his choices. Okay. So all of these are fantastic, right? And another factor was that he had to wait for the adult to present him with that board, right? So, and they hadn't tested whether he could like discriminate visually. he couldn't really do that. So there are these 4 choices, right? And so he had to wait for the adult to present it. And then he had to select, which really didn't make sense to him. Then he had to hand it over, then wait for the adult to prompt the appropriate social interaction, right? Or he could just scratch a peer and get the reaction. Which one's easier? Like, the scratching the peer is easier. So I said, you know what? And instead, unfortunately, we're going to have to like have someone on him, put him next to a peer, body block the aggression, right? Don't let him scratch the peer. And then immediately prompt the high five or the, the elbow bump, the smiling at a peer, whatever it is, and prompt the peer to give him that attention right back. Like, hi, buddy, hi, bud, because that's the only way you're going to strengthen those responses, right? We have to teach him a new way right there with the peer to access attention, but it can't involve all these lengthy, laborious steps that are adult controlled, right? So we have to look at, efficiency, effectiveness. Let's do something quick and easy in the moment that's as quick as him being able to scratch a peer, but it's better and socially appropriate, right? So yes, preschoolers are awesome. They're so much fun. Oh my gosh, yes. So now the DRA part of this, I know you're like, what the heck, another acronym, right? That all that is I'm not going to reinforce this. I'm going to reinforce this, right? An alternative behavior, just an alternative to the challenging behavior. I don't want scratching. I'm going to reinforce the fist bump. I don't want scratching. I'm going to reinforce the elbow bump or the high five, right? So I don't want flopping out of the chair. I'd like a break, please, right? And I've had students where I said, okay, we first initially reinforced the break. Then it was like, okay, now that you can communicate that effectively, I'm going to tell you that you have 3 breaks to use in the next hour. You can use them whenever you want, right? Just, this is the contingency. You can take 2 minutes, take a walk, you can read a book, whatever, but then you have to come back, okay? So we're just teaching that functional response of saying, I don't like this, I want out of this, or I really want attention, please attend to me, right? Either way, but we're reinforcing those things, not the challenging behavior, okay? So, okay. Let's see. What am I doing here? Okay, I need to close the chat. Okay. Why is okay, there we go. My PowerPoint wasn't working. Okay, so often we get it wrong, you guys, and I have gotten it wrong a million times in my academic career, right? My clinical career, where we think we know what we're doing. And then it turns out we actually don't have a match, right? It's like a kiddo that wants to get out of circle time, right? I hate circle time. I don't want to sit in circle time. I'm going to like pinch a peer next to me. And then the teacher goes, whoa, will you take him out of here, right? Will you just take him over to a table? And the kid is like, yeah, got out of it, right? I love seeing kids just outside of classrooms horsing around. It's like, what are you guys doing? It's like, oh, we got kicked out, right? Well, we can't feed in to the escape, right? For kids who don't want to be where they are, we can't say, hey, go to the principal's office. I had a principal, bless his lovely heart, kids would get sent to his room and he would give them a candy bar and chat. And I was like, oh, no, the teacher sent them there because it wasn't a good strategy, right? Because they were causing some struggles in the classroom, but they were getting exactly what they wanted, right? So timeout only works if you're taking a kiddo from kind of a reinforcing situation to a less reinforcing situation, right? And you guys, in Wyoming, you have guidance on like seclusionary timeout. It cannot actually be used. And we'll talk about that at the end. But it's very worth knowing what your state's guidelines are on timeout. Now, timeout is super effective if it's used in the classroom, if people don't attend to that kiddo, if it's kind of like, you need a break for a minute, let's take a timeout, right? And sometimes it keeps kids safe, right? If they're about to hurt someone else or hurt themselves and they need to be removed, absolutely, right? But that's after we've done the analysis and figured out what's maintaining that behavior, okay? And if it's escape, that's not a strategy we want to use. Providing lengthy explanations, right? I say we don't negotiate with terrorists. I'm sure everyone has worked with one of those kids who can talk their way out of anything. And it's like, no, we're not going to have this discussion, right? I'm going to just, remove, we're just going to have some basic instructions, right? Because negotiating only gets me farther away from the initial task I was given, right? Removing the demand, well, again, that just got them out of what they wanted to do, right? I don't want to do this math sheet. Okay. And then if I just say, you know what, you don't really have to do that today, right? Well, tomorrow, it's not going to do it either. Now, if I had set up a thing where I say, okay, you know what, you can take a break for a couple seconds, right? Or minutes, or you reinforce this appropriate communication, which is, I don't want to do this right now. Can I have a break, please? Cool, sure, right? But I'm not going to reinforce the yelling, the screaming, the destruction, right? The paper ripping, the flopping. No, that doesn't get you out of that. I'm going to keep presenting whatever it was the initial demand was. When you can effectively tell me in some kind of polite communication, break, please. Cool, yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we don't want to implement these things if we have a child that's motivated by escape. Attention, guess what? A lot of these are the same, right? I can relate. As a mom, I like to talk at kids. Better to just zip it, right? Wait till they're appropriate, then give them the attention, okay? Because the whole like, we don't do this, right? Reprimands, not good. Again, some kids don't care. It's attention to them. I don't like being reprimanded, but a lot of students, they have compromised backgrounds. It's like, it's attention coming my way. I love it, right? So we want to avoid reprimanding because it doesn't get us anywhere. We can actually wait and then reinforce an appropriate behavior and praise and get the same result, right? So this is hard. In fact, when I started at a summer camp, I was 14 years old. We had a behavior analyst come in and give us some strategies because we had kids with all different disabilities, and a lot of them have challenging behaviors, and we had them all summer. One of the things he said was, if you give a reprimand, if you tell a kid to stop it or knock it off or don't do that, you then have to turn around and immediately give 4 to 5 praise statements to anybody, okay? Now, that's hard. And some days at the end of the day, I'd be like, crap, I'm down 60, But then the next day we'd have to start with that and deliver 60 pieces of praise. Well, after that, you train yourself to just be lovely and deliver praise all over the place. Okay? I even do it at home. I told my husband, thank you for unloading the dishwasher. And he said, your reinforcement stuff doesn't work on me. But it actually does, because he unloaded it again, right? So be able to, right, give praise when it's, genuine praise, okay? But don't reprimand, because that can feed into those attention-seeking behaviors, okay? Negotiating, lengthy explanations, repeating the instructions. Now, I'm not saying if a kiddo didn't understand, right? But sometimes kiddos will be like, hey, what'd you say? What do I need to do again? And it just feeds into that. But your students, and the ones that are like, you heard me the first time, buddy, right? So, okay. Another mismatch intervention is when a kiddo wants access to something, right? A toy and some kind of item, iPad. Well, if they engage in cruddy behavior and you give it to them, guess what? That's not a good intervention. Teach them how to request it functionally, right? Also, the buffet analogy means I'm offering kids this and this and this and this and this while they're engaged in challenging behavior. I saw that in a school, I had a kid flopping, doing the full like fist kick, rolling around, right? Like a big inchworm. And the teacher was going, do you want to go to the music room? Do you want the iPad? Do you want to go get a snack? And I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, wait. And he's finally sitting up, looking at you. Then we can say, stand up, let's go back to the classroom or whatever. Then he gets choices. Then he gets offered good things. We don't do it right when he's in the throes of all this challenging or maladaptive behavior, right? Because what will happen again? Oh, you know what? I'm feeling like the iPad. Hey, remember what happened last time? I'm going to flop around. I'm going to, pound my fists, do a little screaming, and then she's going to offer it to me again. That's cool. No, we just wait it out, right? And when they're appropriate, then you offer them choice. Okay, so now we're going to take a little quiz. And you guys are going to do a thumbs up or thumbs down if you have it as an option on your Zoom. Or you can do a yes or no, okay? So we're going to read a little scenario, and I want you to say whether it is function matched or not, okay? So here's the first one. Joey engages in scratching and pinching his classmates to get attention from the parent and teacher. The selected intervention involves giving a verbal reprimand. Joey, hurting others is not nice, right? And vocally prompting Joey to apologize to the peer by telling the peer he's sorry. Okay, what do you guys think? Is this function matched or not? No, no, no. Oh, you guys are so good. I'm so proud of you. No, no, no. Yes, good, 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 good. I'm so proud. You're right. It's not function match because Joey is engaged in the challenging behavior to get attention. And guess what? He's getting a boatload of attention for it, right? Not good, not good. We need to teach Joey a functional way of asking for attention, right? That doesn't involve a reprimand and giving him attention to get his peer or to tell the peer he's sorry. Yes, no, with an exclamation point. Good work, you guys. Okay. So, and this is hard, right? I don't really make kids apologize because it delivers attention for something and I can't guarantee that they're sorry, right? That's a private event on their part. So I usually just attend to the victim of whatever the crime has been and then just move on. Yeah, it's like when a kid bites another kid, attend to the kid that got bit. Don't make a big deal about it because, oh man, once a kid becomes a really solid biter, it's hard to decrease, right? Okay, so let's do this. Oh, I swear, my PowerPoint. Okay, there we go. Number 2. Carol screams and throws instructional materials to get out of collaborative group work. This behavior is disruptive and sometimes students get hit by items she throws. The selected intervention involves moving Carol to a small room attached to the classroom where a para has her continue her same work. Function matched or not? Okay, I'm seeing lots of, okay, now you guys, okay, good. I'm seeing, this is a mixed one, right? I'm seeing a lot of no's and yeses. Now I want you to read the first sentence again, okay? Read that, okay, good. Now I'm seeing, okay, no, 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 yes, okay. Okay, I will tell you, yeah, this is not function matched. And here's the reason. Carol wants to get out of group work. And what is happening? The para is taking her out of it and giving her one-to-one, right? Now, I'm not judging the para, you guys. She's probably been directed to do this, right? But Carol is getting exactly what she wants. So she will continue to throw stuff, right? And probably start adding challenging behaviors, aggressing directly on peers, maybe screaming, right? Maybe destroying the items first, then throwing them. We cannot let Carol get her way and get pulled out and get that individualized, right? Yeah. Okay. So yes. Now you guys, it would be difficult, right? And other students are getting hurt. Yes. So what we need to do is have somebody block her from throwing the materials, right? Or move her away to a separate table near that group work. Do not pull her out of the room, right? Because you're absolutely right. It's going to be physically involved. Someone's going to get hurt. Okay. Or maybe we minimize the amount of materials that Carol has at the table first, right? But pulling her out of there and giving her one-to-one attention is only going to maintain this behavior. Now, you guys have some fantastic experience. I'm so proud of these responses, right? There's a bunch of ways we could deal with this, but pulling her out and giving her that one-to-one is not going to get rid of that behavior. She's going to get better at it. And she's going to get faster and she's going to do more of it. It's going to get more intense, right? So we have to realize, okay, we cannot let her escape. We can adjust the curriculum, right? We can give her a richer schedule of reinforcement. We can do all these other things, but she does not get to leave that group work, okay? So yeah, absolutely. Jillian, yeah, good. Yeah, room clears are heartbreaking, right? Because the other students get disrupted, but it's actually better to do that than to haul a student out. So if you have students that are used to room clears and can, safely get away, that is a good option. Instead of physically being involved and, trying to move a student that's escalated, right? So, but the point being, like, we can't let this work for Carol, right? She's got to have another functional response, okay? Okay, now, how about this one? Tommy engages in eye poking to get peer and staff attention. The selected intervention involves the teacher and paras wearing motivators, right, our little timers, and delivering high quality attention or prompting peers to deliver high quality attention on a set schedule of between every 1 to 4 minutes. Okay, what do you think? Yes. Is that function matched or not? Yes. Good. You guys are right on. Yes, this is function matched because Tommy engages in eye poking, right? He's poking his own eye. Ooh. To get peer and staff attention. Okay, so we've already analyzed, and this is attention maintained. Awesome, they're putting him on a rich schedule of attention, right? They're doing an NCR basically, right? Non-contingent reinforcement on a schedule, plus they've got the peers involved. How cool is that? Because you guys know peer attention is way more powerful than us adult attention, right? Sorry, that's the way it is. Especially middle school, high school, man, they don't care what teachers are saying usually. They're like all about the peers. So that's fantastic. And if they give him this rich schedule of attention, Tommy won't have to eye poke, right? Because that's fantastic. I did have a student at one point, we had one at our school that unfortunately had a tumor in his eye and they had to remove his eyeball. So he had a glass eye and they would have to keep, adjusting the size as he grew. This kid learned he could pop out his eyeball and get a really cool reaction. And wow, yeah, right? We even called the paramedics the first time and they were like, we don't know what to do with this. So then mom came, she's like, pop that sucker right back in and go about his day. Like, okay, now we know, cool. So yeah, I know, right? Okay, so you guys, that's awesome. Okay, now learning, we're gonna bust a move here and just talk about, you know what, actually, how are we doing on time? I'm just checking this, 11, okay, we're good. I have a couple minutes. Some other things to consider, right? I talked about the board of interventions for my preschooler and how that really was more intense, more involved than what his behavior was. So he was not likely to engage in that appropriate behavior. He's not going to wait for an adult to present this board to him, make the selection, hand it over, right? That involves way too much work. We have to be creative. We have to think out of the box and think, God, I've got to get this, replacement behavior to be easy, to be quick. I once watched a preschooler raise her hand in such a lovely way and say, I'd like goldfish, please. And I'm not kidding you. The person who was running snack was like, use your words. So this little preschooler had to flip through her textbook, get the I, flip through, get the want, flip through, get the goldfish, get the please, put them on the stupid sentence strip, hand it over. And I was like, what are you doing? And then the teacher did not take it in time. This little girl's waiting patiently. So guess what? Underneath the table, she went, starts picking at people's feet, picking at shoelaces. And I was like, I could have predicted that one, right? She had a beautiful response. It didn't get reinforced. You made her do more work. I don't know why. And now she's engaged in challenging behavior. Of course she is. So so that's the simplicity and the efficiency, right? We also have to take into account social considerations. Like, are we teaching this kid a valuable social skill that will be maintained by the natural environment, right? Because if we're not, we better not waste our time, right? It's just, we've got to have things that can be supported by other peers, other teachers, other environments, right? It's got to be individualized. And do we have the resources to do it, right? That's always a consideration. We might not. So will this intervention lead to a better quality of life? Right? I became aware of some adults that were living in high school. They were working on the vocational skill of doing their own laundry, right? Which is fantastic, very functional skill. Then they moved into a group home where there wasn't access to a washer and dryer. So the instructors in the school had taken all this time to teach them the task analysis, all the different responses, reinforced this whole sequence of behavior, fostered their independence, and then they moved into a spot where they could not even use that behavior. And so it was like, oh, what a waste of time on everybody's part, right? That time could have been used teaching them other things. And so, and does the learner possess prerequisite skills, right? If I'm going in with an intervention where I want to teach them how to use a break card, like, do they have the ability to scan the desk? Can they pick up a card? Can they, recognize text? Can they push a button? Can they actually do all the prerequisite skills that I need? I need to assess that, because I can't go, you know what, teaching you this today. Oops, forgot to check whether you can actually do all these prerequisite skills. Okay, super important. Another thing is like, hey, how fast do we need this to work? Like, if it's an unsafe behavior, we need it to work right away, right? But if it's a long-term thing and we can invest a lot of time in it, cool. Like, let's look long-term, 6 months or so, you know? Have you taken safety into account, right? We always have to think about that. And the individual's strengths and preferences. Some kiddos are great at using visual supports, right? And some kids are way better with like auditory directions. Some kids love social situations and having peers involved. Others are like, no, I'm good. I'd rather spend a little time by myself, right? And doing this leisure activity, which is fine. We all have different preferences, right? Some of us love big social situations and group work. Other people are like, no, I'm not so into that. I'll just work quietly over here. Cool. Have you considered the individual's deficits and needs, right? That's what we're all about in general ed or special education. We are working to give them viable skills that will help, right? Be a functioning, happy person, have a high quality of life, right? So we always need to take that into consideration. Like, this first and foremost should benefit my learner. My learner. It's not about the teacher, right? It's not about other adults. It's the learner that's number one priority for us. Okay. We talked about simplicity and efficiency. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Occam's razor, right? But it's like the simplest, most, kind of basic thing should be done first, right? And that's with behavior too. I have read behavior plans that are like 20 pages long. And it's like, no one wants to read that. Those should be simple and quick, right? I know many people don't go and, write and implement the behavior plans here, but everything we do can be simple and efficient. Doesn't have to be convoluted and, really complex. So we should always try the simplest intervention first. And with behavior, when I go in to, address some challenging behavior, whether it's in a home, whether it's in school, I say, okay, what's the one behavior that we really need to get rid of first that will like affect all things, right? Because sometimes you're like, well, this kid does this and this and this and this and this and this and this. Like, whoa. I can't address 20 behaviors at once. I need to address one behavior and I need to do it with fidelity, right? High quality. We need to be consistent. And when we get that behavior under control, then we can start working on the other ones. Okay. Okay. This, you guys, is kind of close to my heart because I supervised a ton of life skills teachers here. So the teachers that had, the kiddos that needed the most support here in Cache Valley. And oh my goodness, like those paraprofessionals, they ran those classrooms, right? They were the ones that were delivering all that like intense, amazing instruction and the care and the love to these students. And a few times we had behavior plans that needed to be implemented. And I would have a para come talk to me and say, this intervention breaks my heart. I cannot let my student cry, or I cannot work my student through this. I'm just not capable of it. And that was amazing to me because I would say, thank you for being honest and thank you for trusting, right? This relationship I have with you. Let's move you somewhere else in the classroom temporarily because this plan is very important and we have to get this behavior under wraps, right? But if there's no buy-in to that behavior plan, I would rather they tell me that and say, I cannot do this. I need to be reassigned in this classroom than trying to implement something like kind of half-baked or trying and then backing off, because then the student knows, whoa, yeah, she's gonna back off. I'm good. I'm gonna keep going with this really challenging behavior, right? So just recognize that in yourself. Like if it's like, I can't buy into this plan, please communicate that. And bring that up and have that difficult conversation, because it's so much better. And it really does affect our learners, right? And so, and maybe you say, hey, I don't feel comfortable on this behavior, but I haven't been trained enough. Could we go over it again? Could we go over this protocol again? Will you model this for me, right? So that I know I'm implementing it the right way. Because if we have like, some person implementing it, some not, like that plan is not going to work. Those challenging behaviors are not going to go away, okay? And implementation, there's a time for it. Not to do after, the first day after Christmas break, right? The first day this kid has had a med change. The first day that, this kid just got back from being very, very ill with an illness. There are times to say, well, okay, you know what? I'm ready. We're going to do this. We're going to implement this plan like Katie talked about, or this strategy. I got a lot of sleep last night. I'm feeling really good about this. Pick that time when you're going to be successful and your learner is going to be successful, right? Unless it's like an unsafe or dangerous behavior that has to be addressed right away. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Miss Christine. Yes, fidelity. I love that. Yes. Smiley face, right?
You've got one more little section.
Oh, I do. Oh my gosh. I did not know that. Let's just keep going. Oh, I do. Yay. Okay. Never mind. You guys get me for another couple slides. Okay. So we kind of already touched on this at the very beginning, but I always want you to keep in mind, like the harmful versus annoying, right? Because I just witnessed not long ago, a child being full carried out of a classroom by two adults. And he was just chilling, like while these adults carried him. And I was thinking, like, what could have been the behavior that resulted in him getting carried across a school to the conference room in the office? Like, and this kid was not escalated. I mean, he was just like, yeah, ladies, I'll take a fan and some grapes. And, how about a nice, like Shirley Temple, right? So I was like, I'm pretty sure this was like a fit caused by adults instead of this kid. And I've had my tantrums, right? I've lost my patience. I've been like, whoa, I need to step back, take a time out for myself, right? But we have to remember, like, just because a kid is irritating in his behaviors does not mean like we haul him out of a classroom or, we I don't know, put all these, intense interventions in place, or we react or blow up, right? Because if we do, it's like you're handing this kid a business card, like, hey, this is how I get annoyed, and he's going to take that card and be like, yeah, thanks, and tuck it right in his pocket. And he's going to use that every day. Oh, and he's going to share it with all his friends, so they know exactly how to annoy you, right? So we really do, we'll talk about kind of extreme measures and legal considerations at the very end, but harmful is when there is going to be imminent damage to an individual, right? Like someone's going to get hurt. I had a student that I worked with who was very large, a high schooler. He would go over to the corner of the classroom, take off the TV and throw it, or the DVD player and throw it, or a computer monitor and throw it. That, you guys, is unsafe. So he ended up in a very restrictive environment by himself with staff supporting him in his own room. Now, had he been throwing like, I don't know, something very little, no big deal, right? But yeah, I can't let a kid throw a TV. Now, unfortunately, this school district, I mean, they were great. They're like, we don't care about the items, the value. We just want people to be safe, right? So if I know that someone's going to be hurt, I need to intervene, of course. The annoying stuff, I gotta let go, right? Just like, whew, deep breath, dose yourself in lavender, whatever you need to do. And it sucks when property damage happens. I had a kid who would go in and rip down every bulletin board, right? And the poor teacher's like, I just spent hours on that. But it wasn't really hurting anybody. We could not physically manage or justify, anything like that, because this kid was not hurting anybody or himself. So we had to let it happen and then figure out, why is he doing this? Attention? Okay, cool. Let's put him on a rich schedule of attention so he doesn't need to do that, right? So please, please keep this in mind, because I know you guys, we're only human and there are things that are super irritating. I had a kid that would ask about 120 times a day what kind of garage door opener people had, right? Well, first of all, I don't even know, but 120 times is super irritating. So we'd have to say like, Kyle, you asked once, right? And then we'd show him a visual that said like, no more questions, right? And then eventually he learned that, okay, I asked once and then I've got my answer, I move on with life. But make sure we distinguish between the two of these, okay? And now Christine is going to talk about the escalation cycle. Yay. All right, let me stop sharing.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
Oh, you know what, Christine, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to take 1 second. There was a question in the chat.
Sure.
Property damage that triggers another student in an abusive home and the damage to the school property is terrifying that student. Yeah, that's an entirely different situation, right? Where I would say we need to figure out a way to help that student feel safe and separate, right? If something is a trigger, that's definitely different and we would want to address. I'm just talking about like general, like it sucks when you're a teacher and you've bought things on your own dime and you've put love and amazing, you know, time into your classroom, and then you have a kid that like destroys something. That's awful, but it does not warrant like being engaged physically with this kid, right? Or saying, you know, I'm going to haul him to the other side of the classroom or to the other side of the school, right? We don't do that. We just have to consider, like, again, is someone going to get hurt? And this is emotional trauma that you're talking about, Tracy. Yeah. And so we would want to put a plan in place. Definitely. Okay. Good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. And I think when you're looking at that, you know, you're looking at magnitude of the behavior and obviously what Katie talked about, just the safety of other people in that moment. I mean, I've worked with kids that break pencils and, you know, break rulers and will do things like that, but it's to put your hands on that child and restrain them or remove them from the classroom is just not appropriate. So you have to really look at that safety aspect. And Katie's going to talk about that a little bit later, in about a half an hour actually today. So that will give you guys hopefully some more clarity. So anyway, I hope you guys don't feel like you're too fire hosed. I know it's a lot of information and hopefully you guys feel like you're learning at a level that you can take some of these things away and implement them when school starts. So moving on to learning objective 7, we're gonna talk about the cycle of escalation. We're going to talk a lot about prevention and then the tools that can be used for de-escalation of a student. And, you know, I think when I present this, a lot of times people are, you know, they'll say to me afterwards, well, this is just kind of common sense. And I think, well, to some people, it is common sense. To others, it may not be as much of a common sense situation. But I think, you know, they're all evidence-based solutions. And so there's research to support their effectiveness with working with our students. All right, so this is the crisis cycle, and I really love this book, Managing the Cycle of Acting Out Behavior in the Classroom. And this diagram that's in there, I use this all the time to just kind of explain to teachers and other people that I work with what really happens in the cycle of escalation and de-escalation and how we manage in every single aspect, in every single stage. So, I mean, you guys can look at this, but on the x-axis, we have the amount of time, and on the y-axis, we have the level of intensity of the problem behavior or challenging behavior. So as you can see in section 1, that's the calm phase. That's where we want kids to be, right? We want them to be able to pay attention and they're not, they're calm, they're happy, they're in a good space to learn. And that's where we want our students. Then you move up the crisis cycle to a trigger, and that's where something starts irritating them. It could be an event, it could be a tag in their clothing, it could be the environment may be a little bit overwhelming. It can be a lot of different things. It could be triggers that they brought from home, and maybe even not having breakfast or having a hole in their sock today. It could be all kinds of things that you may know and be able to see, and you may not know. And then we move up to this stage of agitation, and then acceleration, and then peak crisis is there at the top. And then stage 6 is de-escalation, and then recovery. So we're going to focus our time today, right now, on kids that are between 2 and 4. We're not going to talk about what happens in crisis or how to come down after that, because frankly, we just don't have the time. But we're going to give you guys some tools that you can pull out of your tool belt to use when our kids are in these other stages of the cycle, the crisis cycle. And as you know, I mean, we've got kids that come into school and they're already maybe in the acceleration phase, and maybe they hover between agitation and acceleration all day long. And we kind of feel like we're walking on eggshells. And I know we've got kids like that, that they never really feel, it never really feels to us that they're in the calm phase. And that's tough, because in the calm phase is where we teach skills. In the calm phase is where we want kids to feel comfortable and happy in their environment. And some of our kids just don't. So this hopefully will give you guys some tools that you guys can use in the classroom and with these kids. And I think the importance of this to me anyway is, well, why don't you guys, we'll do a chat. So teachers are teaching the classroom and they notice that Katie is acting out. What phase of this crisis cycle do you think that most students are in when the teacher first notices? Do you think they're in level 2, stage 3, or stage 4, or stage 5? What do you guys think? Yeah, good. We've got a lot of 3s and a lot of 4s. And research shows, you guys, that we don't recognize that there's a problem until our kids are in acceleration or level 4, which means they're a volcano gonna erupt, right? And we're going, oh, there's a problem and I better address it. And then you know what we do, and it's kind of unfortunate, but I do the same thing. And Katie, you know, Katie and I both admit freely that we have made a lot of mistakes, and we still do make mistakes. There's so much going into behavior and working with our kids. But most teachers recognize that there's a problem and then possibly start to address it in the acceleration phase. And a lot of times teachers will just say, I'll ignore it. And if I ignore it, it will go away. And generally it doesn't. Generally that child ends up exploding and ending up in peak crisis, which is crying, screaming, running, hitting, all of those types of things. And so it also is important to understand that when a child is already in that acceleration phase and we step in, that we don't step in saying, okay, take deep breaths and let's count to 10, because you're going to get punched, right? They're past that phase now. We're in the fight or flight phase. Our rational thinking, that time is done. We can't go in and talk to them and have a conversation at that point. So what I've done is I've laid this out into 3 stages for you and put some tools in there so that you guys can access those tools when your kids are in that those phases. I didn't have time to really go through and talk about what a student may be exhibiting as far as behaviors in each of those stages, but and we just don't have the time to do that. But I did want to give you guys some tools so that you guys could access that. All right, so your best practice is always prevention. And I tell teachers, prevent all day long, give compliments all day long, tell the kids what they're doing well all day long. When you start creating that cycle of reinforcement and a positive classroom environment, it just kind of takes over. Teach kids how to reinforce each other and give each other put-ups and compliments, right? And that will prevent a lot of problem behavior. You're going to spend the most of your time in prevention, but it is a conscious effort that we have to make all day, every day, to be putting those strategies in place. It's hard for our kids to be at school. They need some of that positive reinforcement and positive comments and relationship building and all of those things to help prevent that problem behavior from happening. Having strong classroom management. So here again is making sure that your class is organized, making sure that you have a place for everything, making sure the kids' accommodations and their IEP are being met, making sure that you have high traffic areas around kids that maybe can't tolerate that, and really looking at the seating charts and who is best seated by who and peer interactions and all of those things. And I know there's so much. I think when I taught 3rd grade, my paraprofessional and I would sit there every Friday and say, we have to change the seating chart, right? We have to, this person can't sit by this person, and this person looks over at this person, and then that person explodes, and then they say, oh, he's always looking at me. And it's like, the classroom management part of our job is extremely time consuming. And there's a lot of thought and effort put into making sure that our classrooms run well and that we give the kids the best chances at success because of the way we run our classrooms and structure our classrooms. And that also goes to just having a procedure, right? Having procedures in place for how the classroom runs. So I know that we had math, our school had scheduled math class right after lunch and recess. Well, I'll tell you what, the kids would come in and they didn't want to do math. And so we had to change our routine. And so we came in and we had 2 minutes of complete downtime. You could lay on the desk, the lights were off. I had a fish tank, visual little video going in the front with some calming music. You know that if you have music that is a certain beats per minute, that it actually, your heartbeat and your breathing, your respiration will match the music that you're listening to. And so it physiologically slows you down. And when you're physiologically slowed down, your brain actually calms down. And so having that just for 2 to 3 minutes, and then we would do math music because my class loved music, and the kids would create raps and all kinds of things. So that was fun. And then we would go into the math vocabulary PowerPoint. Then we would go into a movement activity with the vocabulary words. And then we would start with instruction. So the kids knew every day that that was the process. We were coming from a very preferred time and a very long lunch section where they would come back in and be really hyper and sometimes agitated and just be really needing to calm down a little bit. If we would have gone right into the math lesson, which originally we did because I didn't know better, we had a lot of kids that just couldn't focus and pay attention. We had a lot of challenging behaviors because they just couldn't go from lunch and recess and running and all that to a math lesson. And so we structured our environment to support what the kids needed. And this is really interesting in working with middle school and high school teachers, having that flow of how they do instruction when the kids come in, whether they start with the bell ringer or they start with a group discussion, or they start with just social interaction, or they start with, you guys have 2 minutes or 3 minutes to just take some deep breaths and get ready for class. It really is interesting how the kids respond to that. And as teachers, I know, at least I felt like every second I had to be go, 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 go. We have a lot of content to fit in here, but sometimes just stepping back and taking a breath and structuring the way that you run your classrooms will save you from having to have some of those problem behaviors occurring. As Katie talked about earlier, just having the rules and expectations with consequences for the kids that follow the rules and consequences for the kids that don't follow the rules, and let the kids come up with those consequences and let the kids help implement or take accountability when they break a rule or when they do well with a rule. And Katie said, there are kids that never do anything wrong. And my own daughter, she doesn't ever do anything wrong. And in 6th grade, she came home one day and she said, I think tomorrow I'm going to do something bad. And I can't even remember what she said. And I said, why would you do that? And she said, because I never get attention for doing the good things. So I'll just do bad things so I can get the attention like all the kids that do the bad things. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, she was aware of that and she wanted some of that attention too. And she didn't actually engage in any challenging behavior because she follows the rules. But I thought it was interesting that all of the kids, want to get some attention from the teacher. But having really set rules and expectations, reviewing them often, having them posted so the kids can see if they're on a paper this big in the front of the classroom and you've got 36 kids in the classroom, I guarantee the kids in the back row can't see those rules. Referring to them often, practicing them often. Having good instruction that is engaging and fun and appropriately paced for the kids, giving peer and attention, creating relationships. I'll tell you, there's a study on praise that was done a few years back, and it said that when praise was implemented by teachers without any other intervention, that it increased positive student behaviors 30%. That's just crazy to me. 30% just because we're telling kids, hey, I appreciate you being on time. Hey, thank you for sitting in your seat. Thank you for raising your hand. It just doesn't take a lot of time And once you start implementing that praise in your classroom, it also becomes just like a natural thing for you to implement, but it increases those positive behaviors by a ton. And then also the relationships. And so John Hattie has written some books on interventions in schools that get the most growth from the students, and relationships has an effect size of, I think, either 0.72 or 0.74, which means that if the student has a good relationship with the teacher, that student can make up to 2 years of growth, academic growth, within 1 school year, just because of the relationship. It's a huge intervention. And I know that there's kids that are more difficult, and those are the kids that don't reinforce us, right, as teachers, but those are the kids that need the most help from us and the most of our attention, creating and praising, creating relationships and praising them for the things that they do. Teaching skills, and this is something that we do when kids are in the calm phase. And like I mentioned earlier, let's see what this kid is struggling to do that maybe other children his or her age are able to do. What are the skill deficits there? Where are we going to teach replacement behaviors like Katie talked about? Who's going to teach those replacement behaviors? It can't be told. It has to be taught. There's a difference between telling a child to do something and teaching a child to do something. Teaching has an understanding or an ability from the child to engage in that behavior when you're not reminding them all the time. And that takes explicit, direct teaching a lot of times. Some of our kids that we work with, they don't look to see what other kids are doing in that environment and just pick up on those social cues. They need that explicit instruction. Giving a lot of choice in, throughout the school day. And I always tell my teachers, give choice in choiceless situations. So if we're going to sit down and do the writing assignment, don't say, hey, do you guys want to do the writing assignment? Because everybody will say, no, thank you. It's, hey, we are going to get started on the writing assignment. Would you like to use a gel pen or would you like to use your pencil? Right? And so it's like, oh, well, I want to use a gel pen. So we are going to engage in the activity of writing. However, you do have a choice of where to sit, what kind of paper you want to use, what kind of writing utensil you want to use, if you want to sit by me or if you want to sit over by Katie, right? And so you have choice in these choiceless situations. Ultimately, the goal is to get the writing assignment completed. And then my last one is to be present. And that's just being there in the moment, be available for the kids. If they're working on independent work, circulate the classroom and be there to answer questions or make a correction in the moment on, if they're doing a worksheet or something, you'd say, hey, you know what, Katie, check out number 2 again. And if you need help, raise your hand and I'm going to be right here to help you. If you're available and you're present, the kids will also, your proximity reduces challenging behavior, right? But they're also there to help and support and continue that relationship with them. When there is problem behavior, you guys want to intervene early. You don't want to wait until stage 4 when the kids are in acceleration. It's almost too late at that point to reason with them or give them strategies or remind them of the tools that they have at that point, because they're just bubbling, they're simmering, they're ready to explode. So you're going to implement different tools at that point. Like I said, we're going to go over those. So prevention, spend 99% of your day with prevention. It's proactive. Crisis management and de-escalation is reactive. We would rather not have the behavior in the first place. So think about what that child needs, what those antecedent interventions may be, and present those and to prevent that problem behavior from happening, right? So we want to make sure that we're giving a lot of prevention. And in that previous slide, there was a lot of ways to do that, and avoiding the reactive crisis management. So in de-escalation, I like to kind of give an example of using your thinking brain versus using your emotional brain. So in the crisis cycle, when you are in the calm phase, you are using more of your thinking brain versus your emotional brain. As you move up the crisis cycle, you start to use more and more of your emotional brain, and you're not able to use your thinking brain. And it's a physiological response. It's not something that necessarily you can control. You can learn to control your behaviors, but as far as what your emotions are doing, that's a little bit harder to control, right? How you feel. And so teaching teachers how to recognize this kid is not able to be reasoned with right now because they are in a state of emotionality that needs to be dealt with differently, right? So when we are using our emotional brain, you've heard the phrase fight, flight, or freeze. We can't reason, we can't talk, we can't make choices right now. We have to get out of the situation or fight or argue. We are just to that point. And I always think about, have you guys ever had an argument with somebody that was pretty intense and you had a lot of feelings about it, and you may have said something or done something that you're like, well, that was dumb, I can't believe I did that. It's because your thinking brain is off, it's turned off, and your emotional brain has taken over, and you don't have as much I don't want to say ability, because that's not true. You can control yourself, but you're not as able to reason and think through and talk through things. And that's why when you get into that place, having a discussion or an emotional engagement with a partner or a loved one, that's why we say, you know what, I've got to take a break from this and let's talk about this later, and just disengage from that, because if you don't, then it could escalate even further, right? So there's a lot of factors on here that affect our thinking brain versus our emotional brain. And just due to time constraints, I just want you guys to go ahead and read through those on your own. But a lot of our kids struggle with peer conflicts and social demands and history of failure. How many kids that you work with have a history of failure? And that phrase just breaks my heart, especially as we get kids older and older in middle school and high school, that they've had sometimes 10 years of failure behind them, and they just need some success, and they need us to step in and help them to achieve some success there. So here's the warning signs. We're going to kind of go over this quickly and then teach you guys some tools and basic strategies that are easy to implement of when to step in and how. So I put these into 3 different stages. So one would kind of be maybe in the trigger phase of the crisis cycle. Stage 2 would be in the acceleration or the agitation phase. And then stage 3 would be in that acceleration stage. So we're trying to reduce the behavior to not reach the crisis at the very top, but to come back down into as close to the calm phase as we can get our kids. So in stage 1, they're in the trigger phase. This is generally where they get off task. They might be fooling around out of their seat, not working on the work, not paying attention to the teacher. So some things that we can do to help them to get back into that calm phase is that we can temporarily remove the expectation or modify it. And as Katie said earlier, maybe we're doing a math worksheet and there's 20 problems and they do 5. And then you say, you know what, you did a great job. I'm just going to cross off the next one or the next 5 or whatever it is, modifying that expectation if they're starting to be triggered by it. And I say to teachers, is the goal for the child to finish the worksheet, or is the goal for the child to understand the concept and meet the objective, the standard that you're trying to meet? And if we modify some of those assignments, it's okay. And teachers, with the direction of their administrator and their schools, how to differentiate those assignments or modify them so that our kids can be successful and not be upset because they can't finish 20 problems, right? You can also temporarily remove that expectation. So if you see a kiddo is in a trigger state and they've just received a math worksheet, maybe you can say, hey, you know what, will you go to the office with me? I need to pick something up off of the printer. Or, hey, can you run these books down to Mrs. Harris for me because I forgot to take them down there earlier. You can temporarily give them a little bit of a break that they don't even know they're really getting a break. I know our secretaries in the office at the school that I worked at for kids with autism, they would always say, we end up with piles of books by the end of the day, right? Because our kids needed that heavy deep pressure of carrying the books down the hallway, and it gave them a little minute to escape the expectation and then come back to it when they're a little bit calmed down and maybe distracted from how they were feeling. Increase their opportunities for success. And I think Katie and I have talked a lot about this today, but do what you have to do for the kids to be successful. And I remember I was at a conference once and the person presenting said, think about the worst kid with the worst behavior you've ever worked with. So you guys just imagine that kid, And now imagine if someone were to give you $1 million, if you could prevent challenging behavior for one day, could you do it? What changes did you make? And that's where we need to start, right? Is how do we increase those opportunities for our kids to contact success all day in every class? Reinforce what you've taught and reinforce what they know, right? If you say, you know what, this worksheet is really easy for you, you already know how to regroup, or you already know the scientific, process for this. And so let's start there. Let's start with what you know, so that they can be like, oh yeah, I do know this, I'm going to be okay. And then help them through the rest of the assignment if they need help. Sometimes our kids just are not able to do things in the timeline in that moment that we need them to do. And so reinforce their learning. And then just be sympathetic and understanding. A lot of our kids come to school and have hard, challenging things in their personal lives and in their environment. And I think about all the kids I've worked with over the years that, reading through their file, and I just think, oh my gosh, if I had this history, I may be engaging in this type of behavior as well. And you may not be privy to know that information, but I'll tell you, a lot of our kids experience a lot of difficulties outside of the school setting, and our ability to sympathize and understand and be compassionate toward them every day, all day. And I know it's hard and I know it's exhausting, but it means a lot. And the more sympathy you exhibit to them, generally, the harder they try to engage in the behaviors that make you happy. Another thing you can do is just increase the levels of reinforcement. So if you've got children on a token economy system, or you can reinforce with praise, or like Katie mentioned earlier, taking some of that assignment away, saying, you know what, since you did that whole assignment, I'm not going to make you do your homework tonight. That's fine. That would probably be reinforcing for a student to continue to engage in the appropriate behavior. All right, so stage 2, this is where we get into the agitation phase of the crisis cycle. So kids are starting to become disengaged from the learning, and maybe they're sleeping, maybe they're trying to leave the classroom. They just are not interested in what's going on at all, and we've tried to redirect them and it just isn't happening. So now this is the time where we got to change something. We don't want to just keep things the same, because if we do, we're going to be disappointed. So change what you're doing, not only with the individual, but maybe what's happening as a class. So maybe we're doing reading and we say, you know what, we're not going to read independently. Let's read this as a class, or I'm going to read to you guys, and change up what you're doing in some way. Give choices, show empathy, give access to, like Katie talked about, the differential reinforcement procedures, give access to what they need. If it's escape, it doesn't have to be a break. It can be an activity or an errand or something else. So that they don't engage in the problem behavior, or allow them to work with a partner. Peer interactions is a good escape, a good evidence-based practice if you implement it correctly. All right, stage 3 is diffusing the situation. So here's where we've got a kid in the acceleration phase. This is where we don't really talk anymore at this phase. This is usually where teachers figure out, like, we really have a problem here, right? They're bubbling at the surface of this volcano. This is where they usually have targeted either verbal aggression or maybe a little bit of physical aggression. We're starting that cycle of escalation. We want to take everything away and avoid that at all costs. Even, I tell some teachers, depending on the student and the level of behavior, I will even tell some teachers, you know what, even if you know you're reinforcing maybe a problem behavior, avoiding that crisis because of the magnitude and the probability that someone could get hurt, just go ahead and cut it however you can. So here's where you want to disengage. Do not give choices. Do not say, well, let's look at your behavior. Maybe we should take some deep breaths together. It's too late for that. Remove the triggers. A lot of times I will take the child and say, you know what, let's go into the break area. And I'll take them into the break area, turn off the light, they're laying on the beanbag, and just give them some time to de-escalate and some time alone. Oftentimes our students don't want to be talked to when they're in this phase. They just want to be left alone. And you can say, give them a few minutes and come back and say, hey, are you ready to go back to class yet? And just see how they are. Check in with them intermittently. Reinforce partial compliance for better behavior. Do not engage in a power struggle, and just put away your pride. I know it's hard. And sometimes you think, well, if I take them to have a break, will they feel like they're being reinforced? And so generally what we do as behavior analysts, at least this is something that I do, is I'll have them engage in some better behavior or some partial compliance, and then say, thank you for doing that. Let's go take a break, or let's go on a walk, or let's go shoot some hoops, whatever that is, for the child to really avoid that challenging behavior, especially if it's dangerous. So then after you have gone through some of these cycles and you've kind of watched to see what's happened, really think back and reflect, you know, not in the moment, but maybe after school, maybe you work with your paraprofessionals and your teachers and you say, you know what, why do we feel like this student was in that crisis cycle? What caused them to begin that crisis cycle? And maybe the student knows, right? And then say, what did we do that worked? What prevention methods are we doing? How many praise statements are we giving a day? Are we doing enough? Do we say more like, hey, you don't have any of your assignments turned in, instead of, hey, let me help you with your assignments, right? Just the way we say things make another person feel valued and like they're doing well versus the opposite. And then say, what can we do differently next time? What are some of those interventions that we can employ so the behavior doesn't occur? Or what skills does a student need to learn to be successful, and who's going to teach that and when? Generally, kids that engage in challenging behavior have skill deficits somewhere, and they need the instruction to learn new skills. And then here's some considerations. You can work on providing more praise. I know when I taught third grade, I had a great para, and we made a goal together that we were really going to implement praise. And every time I would make a praise statement, I would put a tally on my whiteboard, so I could keep track of how many praise statements I was making. And then I would try to do better the next day. And it just got to be a cycle. And my students were so reinforced by that and so proud. I would say, oh, I love the way Anna is sitting up so tall in her seat. And all the kids would be like, whoa, you know, they're all sitting up so tall in their seat. And it's so fun to see praise actually work. And even with our high school kids, you just do it in a different way, right? You're probably not going to praise high school kids by saying, oh, I love the way you're sitting up so tall in your seat, but saying, hey, you know, I'm so glad that you're here today. I love your contributions to my class. That comment for most people goes a long, long way in preventing problem behavior. Working on your relationship with a kid, and I've gone over a few things that you can say, and I'm sure you guys can come up with some other ideas on how to strengthen your relationship. It doesn't take long. It takes seconds on a daily basis to check in with a kiddo and help them feel like they're valued in your eyes. I had a teacher that was very boring in 7th grade, but he would always greet me at the door and call me by name. And when he saw me in the hallway, he would say, Christine, I'm so excited to see you in 7th period today. And I would think, oh my gosh, I was going to slough that class because it's so boring and he's so monotone and it's history and I hate history. And my friends are all sloughing 7th period. But I would show up to 7th period because he calls me by name, because he is excited to see me. And even though his classroom was probably my least favorite class my whole middle school, high school career, I never missed his class because I felt like it was important for him that I was there. Create a new plan. The best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior, right? If the kids are engaging in this problem behavior all the time, we've got to change things up. Don't wait until it's too late. And then, as we've said a lot of times, teach new skills. So think of de-escalation as the beginning, not the end, right? So we de-escalated a student, and that's awesome. We have to reflect and figure out what strategies worked. What's the function of the challenging behavior? What does the student need? What can I change in the classroom? Is this a child find situation? I mean, that's federal law, right? Teachers are obligated to locate those children who may need special education services and get them into the RTI process, not only for academics, but for behavior as well. If we don't change something, nothing will change. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I have done that, and I know you guys do it too, because we just get up and do the same thing every day, but really taking time to be thoughtful and think about what things are working and not working, and how can we change those things to prevent the challenging behaviors. All right, I'm going to turn the time back over to Katie, and thank you guys all. You did a great job, and hopefully you're not too worn out yet.
No, we're coming into the home stretch, guys. I promise, right? Okay, let me share my screen. And I'm gonna steal it from Christine. Okay. And we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this. Okay. Okay, so we just have to touch base for 1 second. We've talked a lot about different challenging behaviors, and oh, here you guys, I'm gonna close the chat. Feel like we just need to cover this, and it's not the most fun information, but we do need to talk about it for a second. And that's kind of the more intense, intrusive types of interventions, things like physical and manual restraints, seclusion, right? Those are really, really involved, right? Very intrusive, only saved for, you know, the most intense behaviors. Every state has their own guidelines. And so number one, you are always covered by emergency procedures. Like if you have to tackle a kid in the street to prevent them from getting hit by a car, right? You are covered. You were doing in good faith what you needed to do to keep this kid safe. I will never forget a meeting I had to sit in that just broke my heart. It was a student who liked to run out of the school, and the parent had a really not so great experience with special education services himself. So he was coming in with a history where he was like, I don't want my kid to be labeled as a, you know, in special education. I don't want him getting any type of special, you know, behavior intervention. And we were trying to explain that, you know, at some point we needed him to give us permission to keep his child safe. And he told me, I said, I would never want to make the phone call that, you know, I had to, your child got hit by a car because he ran out on this very busy street. Like you have to give us the freedom to be able to keep him safe as educators. And he said, I would rather get that phone call than have you lay your hands on my child. And broke my heart, right? Mostly because he had had such a horrible experience in his past for him to think that he would rather have his kid have this, you know, horrible consequence than us physically intervene. Of course, we still said, I said, you know what, I will stand by that. I will always keep your child safe. But, you know, in this whole realm of behaviors, if we can obviously, you know, stand back, not get physically involved unless we have to, that's what we need to do, right? There are so many trainings out there, you know, MANT, safety care. Some districts have their own to teach people how to, you know, minimally keep people safe and be physically involved. And so please, if you have access to those trainings and can participate, or I don't know if, you know, there's mandates where you are, participate in those and only intervene if, you know, if it's not an emergency situation, only intervene if you do have that training, okay? Because when we lay our hands on a child, right, if it's not in a, you know, pat the shoulder like, hey buddy, when we lay our hands on a child, it can just elicit all these emotional responses. You know, Christine talked about some of these students having histories of trauma and anxiety. And the minute you do that, sometimes that brings up all that old history and can be that setting event for, you know, these really emotional responses. We have done presentations prior where there were so many students that were unfortunately lost their lives because of inappropriate restraints, inappropriate prone holds. And in your state, you are not allowed to do some of these holds, most of the holds. Of course, I keep saying respect and dignity, right? We always want to maintain that. And so you guys do have your own state guidelines. And I Googled them. It's a fantastic document. It lays out everything legally. I honestly would take the time to read through the sections on restraint and seclusion, because often unfortunately, school staff are not aware, and, kind of haul a kid down the hall to put them in a timeout situation that is absolutely not supported, number one, by best practice or evidence-based practices, or by the state laws. And so we really need to be careful. In this document, they give guidance for what timeout rooms should contain. They have to be a certain size. They have to be covered in soft material. It, cannot be a room in the school that was once an electrical closet or, used to store other things. It has a cement floor and pipes coming out of the wall. I've seen it. It's not safe. Okay. So again, we always want to remember that, if we can back up and let a student de-escalate on their own, while keeping other people safe, that is the best situation, right, to avoid getting physically involved. They have multiple definitions of restraint, right? We have mechanical restraints, prone restraints, locked seclusions. These are completely illegal, right? We cannot implement any of these procedures. Prone restraint, so is when you have a student on their stomach. And what ends up happening, unfortunately, in some very public cases that have been in the news over the past few years, students end up not being able to breathe and end up suffocating. And often, staff, I think in those situations just thought that the student was finally calming down. And unfortunately, they lost their lives. So we want to keep everybody safe and analyze behavior from a functional perspective, right? And then, implement these function matched interventions that will allow those students to have a high quality of life, have socially appropriate responses, right? And so hopefully, you would not be the ones on the front line dealing with behaviors that are so unsafe and so dangerous that they would result in more restrictive interventions, okay? And aversive interventions, people are, unfortunately, there's a school still out there that says they're ABA based. They are still delivering shocks to individuals with disabilities. I cannot understand it, but that is definitely an aversive intervention, right? I've known people who have sprayed things in kids' faces. Christine mentioned the poor kid that gets woken up that way. I've seen it in schools too, where people are spraying things in kids' faces or in mouths, lemon juice, vinegar. Yeah, we don't do that, and you guys know that. Anyway, I know on that happy note, right? We are going to move on. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat box, right? We are going to move on. You all received a case study about Warren, okay? Now, we are going to give you the choice. You can, because I know so many of you are returning and maybe had a student, last year and the last couple of years who you're kind of thinking about through all of this material. You're like, oh yeah, this could apply to this kid. Or maybe of a student that's returning in the fall, right, who might have demonstrated some challenging behavior, and you're like, okay, I'm getting ready, I'm getting excited, like we're going to analyze this, we're going to get it under control. You could either pick that student that you have a personal kind of history or relationship with, or you can use the case study, okay? And I know some of you guys are in groups, some of you are, by yourself, and that is a-okay, right? What we'll have you do is just kind of, and we'll pop this in the chat box, right? We want just your thoughts. We want you to put this together, okay? And so you're going to identify the problem behavior, right? You're going to kind of think about that function. Now we realize you don't have data here. So we're just going to kind of wing that part, because normally you'd be looking at the data, looking for those patterns. Then you're going to kind of suggest a function matched intervention, okay? And we want you to, think about all the things that you've listened to today, the considerations, right? The environmental factors, de-escalation strategies. So what we want in the chat box is give us a little blurb about the behavior, and then give us a little bit about the function matched intervention that you would choose, okay? So you can say, running down the hall, escape, basically function, and then we're going to implement, an FCT for a break, right? Just a little blurb. We kind of want to see that you guys are able to put all the pieces together and give us back that information, okay? So we will take, what time is it? We have about 10 minutes for this, 10, 15 minutes. And so you guys, this is also a great time if you have questions to ask us in the chat box. We'll both be watching it. If we can help you in any way with any of the problem solving, or if you just have questions in general. Okay, so Christine and I will both be available, and let's go for it. And you should have access to that case study. Brenda sent it. Okay, so I'm going to open up my chat. I'm going to stop. Well, actually, I'll leave that open so that you guys can see that. And we'll do this. Oh, Tracy, what is sickening? What did I miss? Oh, that's scary. Oh my gosh.
Katie, those comments were from when you were talking about restraint and different methods.
Oh, yeah. My gosh. Yes. Sorry. I was like, was there an incident? Yeah, no, it is absolutely Dave Forbush, who is now one of the directors for the Center for the School for the Future here on the Utah State campus. He and I used to do a presentation, and I would cry every time I had to do this presentation, because there were 10 incidents listed by, I believe it was OSER, the Office of, a government funded agency. And there were 10 restraint incidents that had resulted in death. And I could hardly choke my way through it. One incident was this individual, they were transporting him on a van, and he started to, I don't know, say some inappropriate comments, and they literally tackled him in the back of the van and thought he had calmed down. The poor man had passed away, and they left him in the van for hours. It was just, oh my gosh, right? So if we can educate and get people to, use other very safe, effective techniques, that's the only way these incidents are going to stop. And so thank you again, you guys, from the bottom of my heart for wanting training, being here. That just shows that, you know what, we're making a difference and we can stop these horrific incidents from happening, right? So I know I get all emotional. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. What do you do for a kid who has no motivation to do anything? I had this kid for 7 years. So I had a student like that. His only behavior that he wanted to do was this. He didn't care about accessing any kind of item, activity. He didn't care about attention. Nothing was reinforcing except his little fingies. And guess what? He always has them. They're free. There they are. Oh my goodness. It was the most frustrating situation. We honestly had to start doing one tiny task and then letting him do this. One tiny task and letting him do this. But we eventually found that, letting him do what he wanted as a reinforcer was what worked. What I always say is if you set this kid free, what would they go to? What would they engage in? If it's being alone, if it's being by themselves and sitting and doing nothing, great, use that, right? Let's do a little work. You can have some time by yourself. Do a little work, have some time by yourself. Honestly, though, in my previous experiences too, I've started using play skills as kind of a teaching moment, right? My kids always had a play skills session and we taught them to engage with toys appropriately. Now, they weren't reinforcers yet. They didn't care, but we taught them these skills and eventually they took on some reinforcing properties. But most of the time I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Why should I work for this? I don't want this toy. I don't know how to play with it. But really kind of getting creative and saying, okay, if I set this kid free, what do they go for? It's actually called a free operant assessment, where I'm just going to watch them and see what they do. Because usually there's something. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to work for it, right? I love chocolate. I love shoes. That doesn't mean I want to work for chocolate and shoes, right? They're my preferred items. They're not actually reinforcers for me. Money is a reinforcer for me, right? I will increase my appropriate behavior to get paid. So we have to be careful, because some kids, you find a reinforcer, what you think is one, a preferred item, and then the minute you place demand for them to access it, they're like, I don't want that anymore, right? It's not worth it. So we always have to be constantly figuring out, like, okay, what is this? What makes this kid tick? There's got to be something out there they will work for. And it's hard, especially when you have kids that their motivation changes on like a minute to minute basis, right? Yeah, but if you can kind of see what they go to in their free time, that's usually, you know, what you can use as kind of a contingency measure, right? Oh, whoops, sorry guys. Let's see, what did I just do? Okay.
I don't know if everybody got the link. I think I see people are still emailing for the link. Kate, do you have that pulled up that you could share your screen, or I know
Brenda said it has been posted.
It's been posted in the chat, but some people haven't been able to access it. So I'm trying to email it to everybody, but there seems to be a lot of people. So I'm slowly getting it to them.
You know what? Let me
share my screen, Katie, and I have it pulled up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You can still talk and I'll just share. But I'm wondering if I need to obviously make this bigger. So.
That's talking because that restraint can kill about the. Yeah, absolutely. You guys, restraint can. Sandy, yeah, and Jim, yeah. I mean, basically, like, restraint is not safe. It's so easy to mess it up, right? That's why I'm like, I'm not gonna. I have had to restrain an individual. Thank goodness I was safety care trained. We had a student that was trying to climb out a window, and she was trying to break the window at the same time. And so, and every time we kind of let her go, she'd go right back for the window and try to break it and get out. And I didn't want her covered in glass. So we actually had a 4-person restraint on this individual to keep her safe. And she eventually de-escalated and we could let her go, and she stayed away from the window. But I am telling you, like, all 4 of us were dripping in sweat, trying to keep the restraint the right way in order to keep her safe. And it was horrible. I mean, it left an impression on me. I hated treating her like that, but I couldn't have her bash a window either. So yeah, it's something that, you know, it's unfortunate. So it's better just to kind of, you know, again, be trained, only implement it if you're trained. If there's someone else in the room that's trained that you can defer to, that's great. And really kind of have that process go through, like, do I need to implement this right now to keep this child safe? Because if they're fine, if it's not a destructive behavior, if it's not an unsafe or harmful behavior, I can just wait it out, right? I also worked with a child who would try to find any file cabinet corner and bash his head into it to try to, like, crack his skull open. Basically, we had to restrain that little man. Unfortunate, again, he didn't have any communication. And so, but we did find out that he was having headaches, really bad headaches. We tracked it, the doctors. And so, you know, that was kind of the root of it, but we couldn't let him do that amount of damage to himself. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Okay. Awesome, you guys. Okay. Oh, I love these suggestions. Awesome. Yeah, you guys. Wow. These are such high quality responses. Oh, yeah, Dwayne, I'm going to respond to you. All right, good, you guys. Okay. Awesome. You guys are doing such a nice job. Does anybody have any questions about any of the content today? You know, one of the interesting things, Christine and I both hold a certification in behavior analysis. It's kind of like a psychologist license, but for behavior analysis. One of the things is we have an ethical code. And so that prevents us from actually giving direct advice about students. We can give general suggestions. We can talk if we've had a student that has similar behaviors in our previous history that we might have intervened with. But so it's so funny because a lot of people have questions about a specific student, and it's hard for me. I want to solve all the problems, but there's so much information that I would need also from their background, from the setting, like what the behavior looks like. So, you know, I would love to say, like, you know, we would need some clarification, but we are so happy to help you today. And I just hope that for our follow-up booster sessions, you know, everyone can attend, and then we could dig a little deeper into some of these issues. Yeah. Running out of the room. So Troy asks, are there cases where the running out of the room might not fit avoidance or attention? That's a really interesting question. I've never actually seen that. Every time I've had a kid bolt, it has definitely been either, you know, attention, avoidance, or they wanted to like check something out in the hallway. I had one student who had an element of OCD, and he would like to bolt out of the room and touch all the outlets in the hallway, which provided a break for him, you know, from his work. And of course it did provide some attention because someone would wrangle him back in, you know, like, because touching outlets is not a safe behavior. But they would, you know, escort him back into the classroom. But he was also like nonverbal, so we could not kind of get to his rationale for why he was doing this, but he would also do it in the classroom. The first thing he'd do in the morning was come in and touch all the outlets. So we had to try to block that. But I don't know, you know, that would depend on the student. It would depend on the situation, kind of looking at the pattern of behavior and what the consequence is, right? What's happening when this kid runs out of the classroom? Is he trying to access something, run to somewhere? I did have a student that would love to run to the gym and hide behind like the curtains and get into all the PE equipment. So it really depends. Need a little more information on that one. Also, I want to just note, once we were doing a training for a school district, and I had a teacher in the front who told the other trainer and myself, you don't have the functions right. You just don't. And we said, oh, okay. You know, what would you like to share? And she said, well, most of my kids do things because they want to control the situation. And so, you know, I said, I totally value your opinion. I could see where you would think that. But when we talk about control as a behavior, like it's like Christine talked about earlier on, right? If we say tantrum, if we say depression, like we have different versions of that in our own head. And so if I said, you know, what do you mean by control? It's like, well, if a student is, you know, getting mouthy and, you know, trying to redirect the conversation or get me to, redirect into another activity. Well, I could still say they're putting escape in from something, right? They're putting time out from the demand you placed, and you're negotiating with them to a certain sense, so they're getting that attention too. So really, all our behaviors do fall into one of these categories in some element. Now, again, most of them are not these nice little, oh, that's only escape, that's only attention, that's only sensory. We usually end up being multiply controlled. It's like I get out of something and I get something for it, right? Running away is one of those. We can't just say, go ahead, go out, run in the street, right? Although I do tell my own children that. We can say, okay, there's some element of they get out of something, but we also have to give a minimal amount of attention to get them back to a safe environment, right? Another one of those is biting, right? It's hard not to give attention when a kid bites you or bites a peer. So we have to do our very best not to react. And like I said, just clean it up quickly and move on. I've been bitten so many times and it is so hard not to react, especially when it's on your inner thigh. Ouch. But I knew that if I reacted, that kiddo would bite more often and bite harder. So it's just one of those things where most behaviors are multiply controlled, but the whole just control aspect of it really is not something that we, it's not scientifically based. I mean, that's how some people perceive it, but we would say, no, there's an element of attention or an element of access or an element of escape in there as well. So.
We have some really great comments in the chat on Warren. Yeah, so some great functions and people putting in interventions for him. So they suggested small group reading, letting him know the
love it.
Yep, smaller environment. So we've got a lot of great comments in there about the case study. So
that's fantastic. You guys have identified that he's struggling, right? Frequent breaks, keep him engaged. I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys, I would have been so honored to have you as paras in my classroom. Oh my gosh, amazing. What to do when you have a student bite in response to the word no or any correction? Okay, so again, like I would actually, Beth asked in general what to do when you have a student bite in response to the word no. I would set that kiddo up and start saying no, and then knowing it's coming, block, and give them a functional response. Like, why are they biting? What's that getting out, getting them? Is it attention? Then we need to, again, get them a way to get attention, get them a way to get out of something. Often when kids are told no, we have to do kind of a delay, a tolerance delay, right? Like not right now. So I teach kids to say bummer or darn, so block that bite and have them press a button or something that says, shoot, I'm disappointed. I really wanted more of that. Just a functional response where instead of the bite, right? And I've had situations where I had to wear flak jackets, right? Big, heavy denim jackets, because I knew a bite was coming. And so, that's another way, like, let's practice over and over where I'm going to tell you no. And instead of biting, I'm going to block it and prompt you to do that functional response, communication response. Okay. Linda, that's a tough one, huh? You guys, so here's one thing, like, you are armed with a ton of amazing information, right? And it's often not well received in some circles, right? And so I think just sharing what you have learned and say, I'm ready to help any situation. I've got this amazing stuff I know, let me help with it. Because when other people aren't following behavior plans, you can say, hey, I learned these behaviors are just going to get worse, right? And I really want to keep this kiddo safe and happy and help them feel successful. So having those, those conversations, but That's hard. That's hard when someone else doesn't want to follow a plan. Unfortunately, the behavior will speak for itself, right? If it's being reinforced, it'll keep going and it'll get worse. And it's so unfortunate. But all you can do is say, I think I have some suggestions. I learned some things. I really want to implement them, right?
Hey, Katie, we're at 12:20 almost.
Awesome.
I love seeing everybody's comments in.
So good.
Yep, it's awesome. So thank you guys and hopefully you guys are reading one another's suggestions in the chat, because there's been some good stuff put in there. You guys have done amazing.
That is, Norm, is there anything for the end of the day that needs to be wrapped up?
We have a few wrap up announcements.
Okay.
That we'll get to. So whenever you guys are finished, we just need about 5 minutes, I think.
We are, I think, done.
All right. Yeah, I need to go take a nap now, you guys. After lunch, I need a rest after this morning. And I knew I would
jump in and do some behavioral interventions. Come on.
Yeah, I need a power nap first, and then we'll jump and do some behavior interventions.
That's fair. That's fair.
No, what great content. And we knew that when we were working with Dina and Katie and Christine and putting this together, we knew that it would be a challenge to there's a balance between too much and too little in terms of the amount of time that we had with you this morning, and wanting to deliver some really nice elements and concepts and strategies that you could now take away after a power nap, take away from the training this morning, and then immediately use in your settings when you go back to your schools. And so I hope that we were able to accomplish that. I just am so grateful to Katie and Christine and their expertise. I love the relatableness to it. Found myself chuckling a few times. I'm sure some of you did as well. So thank you so much. Let me, and the good thing is we aren't done as far as this training. What we are planning to do, and I'm trying to multitask, sharing my screen and talking. It's hard for me to do that. My wife worries when I'm driving because, are you seeing the day 2 wrapping up slide now?
Yes. Because
we'll be talking and I won't turn where I'm supposed to turn or whatever. We get lost, but she's to the point where she just lets me go. And I figure it out. And I'm like, after talking, where are we? And she's like, oh, I know where we are. I just wanted to see how long it would take you. Anyway, so today was all about behavior. And yeah, I was just watching the chat. So much engagement. You are great people. We thank you so much for what you're doing in your schools. And hopefully we were able to help somewhat in preparing you and maybe motivating you or kind of giving you some more context and being able to start your school year. But the good thing is, particularly with the behavior training, the behavior supports, behavior management information that you just had, we are planning to have a couple of booster sessions immediately. The first 2 booster sessions, we're calling them, of the coming school year are planned to be a little more of a deeper dive in some of these concepts. So I'm skipping forward on the slide here a little bit, but we've attempted to make these the 3rd Thursday of the month, and we're planning for 7 more booster sessions to be about 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes, depending on the topic. So 4 p.m. to 5 or 5:30 is the time frame that we're thinking of. And it's difficult to try to find a good time for offering this kind of training because you all are busy during your school day. And then of course, after school, you have lives as well. And so we just kind of felt like this would be sort of give us the best chance to reach most of you. And I do believe the sessions will be recorded, but if at all possible, we invite you to put these on your calendar and start to plan for them. And you will be receiving more information about registering and signing up for those. And it's going to be really good. And then following those 2 booster sessions, September and October around behavior, you'll also be getting sometime between now and before the start of these booster sessions, we need your feedback. We'll be putting together a priorities or a needs assessment survey to you all who have registered for these sessions to kind of get your feedback on what is it that you are interested in learning about as a paraeducator, as a member of an instructional team. What can you help us identify as your priorities as a large group? And those needs, that feedback and that needs survey will guide our direction in planning follow-up booster sessions for November through April of this school year. So be thinking about that. Watch for that needs assessment in your email. Let's see, I might need to have Dina talk about the PTSD credit form. I know there's a link that's being provided. You want to talk about that, Dina?
Sure. So if you are also seeking PTSD credit for this, I know that there are many teachers and also paras who are certified who may be needing that PTSD credit. So Brenda has posted that in the chat. If you didn't see that, because there's so many wonderful messages that I'm seeing. Oh, she just posted it again. Thank you, Brenda. Please go ahead and click on that link. There's also STARS credit for you if you are early childhood. So both of those will be available to you, but we'll need you to fill out that form to be able to get that credit so we can send it in. And there will be an evaluation form as well. So sorry, Norm, you're probably going to talk about that.
No, go ahead.
So there is an evaluation link for this whole conference. So if you could please, it really does help us to drive future professional development. And some of this is why we are having this conference today. So please do fill out that evaluation form. It really is, we value your feedback. So we really appreciate, and thank you all for being such amazing participants. Honestly, this has been one of the most engaging trainings that I've seen, and you know, it's wonderful. So thank you.
Absolutely, I agree, Dina. You know, so again, just thank you for your participation. Thank you for what you're doing. And this, like I said, this isn't it. Your state's going to continue to support you, and we hope to be part of that in some way. One of the things that we do, and this was offered under this umbrella, was operate this National Resource Center for Paraeducators, the NRCP. And on this slide here is the link to that website. It has various kinds of resources and information. We are, one of the things we're excited about doing this year is offering regional, we used to do a national conference, which we still will do in the future, but right now we're breaking it up into regions. And so feel free to check out the regional virtual offering. It will be very similar to this, but it will dive deeper into other kinds of content and topics. So feel free to check out that National Resource Center for Para's website. And thank you for filling out that evaluation. We'll use that information, as Dina said, to plan for future opportunities. Anything else? Announcements wise, remember your W-9s, fill them out, print it out, sign date, email them to Jennifer Duncan at the state. And yes, a lot of these announcements and reminders will be put together in a follow-up email.
And along with that, there will be, if you are planning to attend the booster sessions, I believe we'll have was there a survey that went out for that, for those booster sessions?
As far as like a needs priorities survey? Yeah, we will be doing that. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So be watching for that information, because these booster sessions, as they talked about before, we are going to definitely, I know this was a lot of information. Somebody talked about the fire hose effect, and I know how you feel about that. So there's a lot of information in these 2 days, but as we do those booster sessions, it will also be sort of as a community of practice. So you'll have time to, we'll have time to get a little deeper into some of those. So if you're interested in committing to those, we would love to have you join us for those. So
yeah, and if you have
more information.
Yes, and this in the chat box, and you mentioned this too, Dina, but absolutely, if you have colleagues that for whatever reason were not able to register and participate in this conference, spread the word and let them know of these booster sessions, because it would still be very applicable to them. In fact, you could forward the email, I would guess, Dina, to them if you have colleagues or teachers or administrators that you think might benefit from this as well. I think all are welcome for these coming up booster sessions throughout the school year.
Absolutely. And I know that some of you talked about maybe your teachers being a part of it. We welcome them being a part of the booster sessions as well. So that could be a really great time for you to plan together and to talk about some of course, with confidentiality in mind, we'll have to keep that in mind, but we're happy to dive into some of those cases with you. So yes, definitely. Please share that information.
Okay, I think we will leave the Zoom room open for a few minutes for those of you who might still be wanting to click on the links to the evaluation link and to the PTSB form. I'm sorry, PTS anyway. And then other than that, thank you so much, Dina. Thank you, Margie Robertson. Thank you so much. Thank you to our presenters, and thanks to Brenda Smith, our amazing remote host, and all of her support in this. And you all go forth and do the great things that you do. Have a great school year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so Brenda, I think maybe 5 minutes, and then Dina, we'll connect on email, and we'll set up dates and times to dig into the booster sessions and the next steps on that. That's okay with you guys.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.